If I had known at the time that a simple missed kiss would lead to uncovering the biggest betrayal of my life, I might have paid closer attention. When I followed the trail of lies, I found more than just an affair, a hidden scandal, and a truth so big it shattered everything. Now, let me take you through it step by step. It all started with small things, so small I almost didn't notice, like a missed kiss goodbye as Leonora rushed out the door for work. Her texts, which used to be filled with little jokes and check-ins, became brief and to the point. Be home late, don't wait up, or the dreaded work dinner followed by, don't forget to pack the kids' lunches. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband. But I wasn't blind. Our conversations grew shorter, edged with tension. I'd suggest a family outing, like Brian's soccer game or a trip to the beach with Millie, our 6-year-old, and she'd sigh, as if I'd asked her to climb Mount Everest. Jameson, I have meetings and deadlines. I can't just take a day off whenever we feel like playing house. Playing house. That stung. It wasn't just at home. Even at work functions, she was different. I went to one of her company's parties, a glitzy rooftop affair with a view of the city. Leonora, always the star, flitted from group to group like a butterfly, her laughter ringing out. But when I approached, her smile faltered, and she introduced me almost reluctantly. This is my husband, Jameson's son. Not Jameson, not honey, not the man who'd stood by her for 15 years. I met her colleagues, but something felt off, especially with one man, a coworker named Niels, who hovered around Leonora all night. Their conversations were laced with inside jokes I wasn't part of. When I asked her about him on the drive home, she brushed it off. Niels? He's harmless, just a colleague. I wanted to believe her. But then there were the secret phone calls. Once, I overheard her laughing in the guest room. I pressed my ear to the door, feeling sick and ashamed. No, you're ridiculous, she said, her voice smooth like silk. I'll figure it out. Just give me time. When she came out, she froze at the sight of me. What are you doing? She snapped. I was about to ask you the same thing, I said. She crossed her arms. It was a work call. If you don't trust me. It's not about trust, I interrupted. It's about feeling like I don't even know what's going on in your life anymore. She replied, well, maybe you should try asking instead of accusing. And just like that, the conversation ended. The breaking point came one rainy Sunday evening. I was in the kitchen stirring a pot of chili when Leonora walked in and dropped the bomb. I'm going on a vacation, she said, her voice casual, like she was telling me she was running to the store. A vacation? I turned to face her. With who? Alone. She replied. I need some time to recharge. Recharge? I repeated, my voice rising. Leonora, we have 2 kids and a mortgage. You can't just. Jameson, I've already made the arrangements, she interrupted, her tone clipped. I'll only be gone for a week. The day after Leonora announced her vacation, the house felt like a tomb. She was still physically there, going through the motions of motherhood and marriage, but something had shifted. It was the way her eyes seemed to skim over me at breakfast, the way her phone never left her side, the way she bristled when I asked even the simplest of questions. After dropping the kids off at school, I headed to my friend Tyler's house. Tyler wasn't just my best friend. He was the guy who told it like it was. No sugarcoating, no dancing around feelings. Right now, I needed that more than anything. I spilled everything as we sat on his back porch. Jameson, he said, I hate to say this, man, but you need to be smart about this. Document everything. Her behavior, her phone calls, where she says she's going. Hell, even check the finances. If something's going on, and I'm not saying there is, you need to protect yourself. That night, as Leonora tucked Millie into bed, I stood in the doorway of our room, watching her. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun, and she wore her favorite lavender pajamas, the ones I'd bought her for Christmas last year. She looked so normal, so Leonora, that I almost convinced myself I was overreacting. But then her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She glanced at the screen and quickly turned it face down. The gesture felt like a slap in the face. I wasn't imagining things. There was something she didn't want me to see. I waited until she fell asleep. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but the locked screen stared back at me, mocking my hesitation. I sighed and put it back down, the guilt of holding it in my hand washing over me like a cold tide. Instead, I turned to my laptop. I started small, our bank accounts, credit card statements. At first, everything seemed normal enough. Grocery store trips, gas stations, the occasional Amazon purchase. But then, I began to notice a pattern. Every Thursday, like clockwork, there was a charge to a downtown restaurant, far from her office or anywhere she'd said she'd be. The name of the restaurant, Mason's Bistro, triggered something in my memory. Mason. Leonora had mentioned him a few months ago, almost casually. Mason at work says this new spot has the best wine list in the city. Maybe we should check it out sometime, she'd said over dinner one night. I barely registered it at the time. I just nodded and asked about her day. But now, the name felt like a splinter under my skin. I opened a new document on my computer and started typing. I listed the restaurant charges, the dates, amounts, everything, even the times of day. I wasn't sure what it meant yet, but Tyler's advice echoed in my mind. Document everything. The next morning, I left for work early but circled back after Leonora had dropped the kids off. I parked down the street, out of sight, and watched as she left the house. I followed her. I felt like a spy in a bad movie, tailing her sedan through the quiet streets of our suburb. She pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop and went inside. From my car, I saw her greet a man sitting at a corner table. Even from a distance, I could see how close they leaned in, their heads almost touching. Her laughter drifted faintly through the open window of my car. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I snapped a quick picture with my phone. By the time Leonora came home that evening, her cheerful demeanor was back in place, as though she hadn't spent the morning with another man. She kissed me on the forehead and helped Brian with his math homework, all while I sat silently at the kitchen table, watching her. But then came the vacation. Leonora's return from her so-called vacation wasn't triumphant or joyful. She breezed through the front door, set her suitcase down, and greeted the kids like a traveler returning from a business trip, not a wife rejoining her family. She didn't even glance at me as she unpacked. "How was your trip?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. "Fine," she replied, not looking up. "Relaxing." I needed it. The word stung. I wanted to scream, to ask her what kind of mother and wife could so easily walk away from her family for a week of self-indulgence. But instead, I nodded and let the silence fester. 2 weeks later, during what should have been an ordinary Tuesday evening, Leonora stood in the middle of the kitchen, biting her lip the way she did when she was nervous. "Jameson, we need to talk." I froze mid-step. "What's going on?" She took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for something monumental. "I'm pregnant." I should have felt joy or at least some semblance of excitement, but all I could feel was cold, sinking dread. "Pregnant?" I echoed. "A third child? How far along?" 8 weeks, she replied softly. That timeline lined up far too neatly with the weeks she'd started pulling away from me, with the late-night calls, the whispered conversations with Mason. That's great," I said, forcing a smile. But Leonora didn't smile back. Her eyes darted away, her body language screaming discomfort. "I know it's a lot to process," she said quickly. "It wasn't exactly planned, but we can make it work." "Yeah," I said, "we'll make it work." That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Was the baby mine? The thought lodged itself in my mind like a splinter. If it wasn't mine, if she and Mason had been seeing each other for longer than I realized, I needed to know. The next morning, I called Tyler. "What's going on?" he asked. "She's pregnant," I said. 8 weeks. There was a long pause. "Jameson, are you sure it's yours?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Then you need to find out," Tyler said firmly. "Paternity test. Don't tell her you're doing it. Not yet. Just cover your bases." While scrolling through the internet, I came across an article about early paternity testing. I learned that from the 7th week of pregnancy, it was possible to determine the father of an unborn child using a non-invasive prenatal paternity test, NIPT. The method relied on a simple comparison, a blood sample from the pregnant woman and a cheek swab from the potential father. The process was described in detail. A small amount of the mother's blood, taken from her vein, contained fragments of the baby's DNA. This genetic material could then be extracted and compared to the DNA collected from the father's cheek swab. The test was 99.9% accurate, making it a reliable way to confirm paternity long before birth. The more I read, the more I realized this was exactly what I needed. It was discreet, accurate, and required no risky procedures for the baby. Now, I just had to figure out how to make it happen. I waited until Leonora left the clinic after her routine prenatal checkup. They had drawn blood from her vein, and I had managed to take one of the vials with her blood. Later, I arranged for a private medical firm to conduct a discreet paternity test. They took the vial with her blood that I had brought and collected a cheek swab from me. The lab then ran the analysis to determine whether I was the father of the child she was carrying. The results arrived 2 weeks later. I opened the envelope in the privacy of my car. My hand shook as I unfolded the paper, scanning the cold, clinical language for the only sentence that mattered. Probability of paternity, 0%. The baby wasn't mine. Leonora had lied to me. She betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now she was carrying someone else's child under the guise of it being ours. The enormity of it was suffocating. When I finally drove home, I knew one thing for certain. Leonora didn't just owe me an explanation, she owed me the truth. That afternoon, I called Amanda. She'd been a friend for years, one of the few people I could count on for straightforward advice. She was sharp, compassionate, and fiercely protective of those she cared about. As a skilled attorney, she was exactly the person I needed in my corner. "Jameson," she said, picking up on the first ring. "It's been a while. What's going on?" I hesitated for only a moment before spilling everything about the pregnancy, the test results, my suspicions about Mason. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Jameson," Amanda finally said, "you're in a tough spot, but you're not alone in this. First things first, you need evidence. If this goes to court, and it probably will, you'll need more than just suspicions and a paternity test. You need concrete proof of her affair, her deception, and anything else that could help your case." "How do I even get that?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Hire a private investigator," she said without hesitation. "Someone who can dig up what you can't." That's how I found Camden Hawkins. Camden was an ex-cop turned private investigator, a gruff, no-nonsense guy. He was known for being thorough, discreet, and, most importantly, effective. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town. He slid into the booth across from me, his coffee-stained notebook already open. "So," he said in his gravelly voice, cutting through the hum of the diner, "your wife's stepping out, and you want proof. Is that about right?" "Something like that," I replied, still uneasy about laying my private life bare to a stranger. "Any suspects?" Camden asked, jotting down a few notes. I hesitated before saying, "A guy named Mason. A coworker." Camden nodded, scribbling the name down. "Anything specific you want me to look for?" "Texts, pictures, receipts, whatever you can find." Camden smirked. "You'd be surprised what people leave lying around. Give me a week." A week later, Camden called me to meet at his office. When I arrived, he handed me a manila folder. "It's all in there," he said, leaning back in his chair. I opened the folder with trembling hands, my stomach churning as I took in the contents. Photographs of Leonora and Mason together at a park, his arm around her waist. Restaurant receipts dated from her work dinners. A hotel check-in record with both their names clearly printed on the ledger. "I tailed them for 3 days," Camden said. "They're not exactly subtle. You've got enough here to prove an affair in court." I nodded, unable to speak. This was the proof I'd been dreading, and yet, it felt like validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. Leonora had been lying to me all along. Armed with Camden's findings, I met Amanda at her office. She spread the evidence out on her desk. "This is good," she said finally. "Damning, even. But we need to think carefully about our strategy. Are you prepared for a custody battle?" I froze. The thought of losing Brian and Millie hadn't even crossed my mind. "She can't take them from me," I said. "She'll try," Amanda said bluntly. "But with this evidence, we can build a strong case. We'll argue that her behavior is destabilizing for the kids. But you have to be ready for a fight, Jameson. She won't go down without one." I nodded. "Do whatever it takes. Just make sure I don't lose my kids." Over the next few days, Amanda and I worked tirelessly to prepare for what was coming. She drafted legal documents, filed motions, and outlined every angle we could use in court. I reviewed everything meticulously. Leonora continued her facade of normalcy. But I knew the truth now, and with Amanda and Camden in my corner, I was ready to fight for my family, no matter what it took. Confronting Leonora was never going to be easy, but as I sat across from her in our living room, my heart pounded like a war drum. The manila folder containing Camden's damning evidence rested on the coffee table between us, a Pandora's box waiting to be opened. Leonora lounged on the couch. Her confidence bordered on arrogance, a woman so sure of her control over the narrative. "Leonora," I said, "we need to talk." Her eyes flicked to the folder. "About what?" "About this." I slid the folder toward her, keeping my gaze steady. She hesitated before opening it. Her face remained impassive as she flipped through the photos and documents, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. "What is this?" she demanded. "This," I said, gesturing to the folder, is proof of your affair with Mason. The dinners, the hotel stays, the lies, all of it. Leonora set the folder down with a sharp slap. You've been spying on me. I shot back. You've been lying to me. And not just to me. To Brian and Millie. To this entire family. You're carrying another man's child and pretending it's mine. Her face flushed with anger. You have no right. I have every right. I interrupted, my fury boiling over. You think you can betray me, destroy our marriage, and walk away unscathed? You're wrong. Leonora stood abruptly. So what now, Jameson? You're going to play the victim? Take me to court. Ruin our kids' lives. I'm filing for divorce, I said bluntly. And I'm taking Brian and Millie. You've made your choices, Leonora, and now you'll face the consequences. And if that's not enough, I'll expose you and Mason for the frauds you are. After she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her, I called Amanda to share the details of the confrontation. She's scared, Amanda said. That's good, but we need to press harder. You mentioned something about fraud. Camden found something, I admitted. Bank transfers, shell accounts. He thinks Leonora and Mason have been skimming money from their company. It's not just an affair, it's a full-blown scheme. Amanda's voice sharpened. If that's true, we can use it to leverage custody. Fraud and infidelity. Paint a damning picture of her character. Send me everything you've got. The next day, Camden delivered the final piece of the puzzle. He handed me a stack of documents, his expression grim. Your wife and Mason are siphoning money from their firm's clients. Fake invoices, inflated expenses, the works, Camden said flatly. They've been funneling it into private accounts for months. If the company finds out, it'll be a PR nightmare. My stomach churned as I flipped through the evidence. How much are we talking about? Enough to destroy them both, Camden replied. Armed with this new information, Amanda and I met to finalize our strategy. Here's the plan, she said, her eyes blazing with determination. We file for divorce and request full custody of the kids, citing infidelity and financial misconduct. Then we notify her firm anonymously about the fraud. Let the company's lawyers and auditors deal with her and Mason. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Let's do it. That evening, I handed Leonora the divorce papers. Her eyes skimmed the document, her lips pressing into a thin line. You're serious about this? She asked quietly, almost as if she hadn't believed I'd follow through. Dead serious. You can fight me if you want, I said, my voice steady. But I've got enough evidence to bury you in court. And when your company finds out what you and Mason have been up to, I let the sentence hang, watching the color drain from her face. You wouldn't, she whispered, her voice trembling. That night, as I tucked Brian and Millie into bed, I felt a glimmer of hope amid the chaos. Leonora had played her games for too long. Now, it was my turn to rewrite the rules. The courthouse felt sterile and suffocating. I sat beside Amanda at the plaintiff's table. Across the room, Leonora sat with her attorney. Leonora's attorney wasted no time painting her as a victim. Your Honor, he began. My client has been subjected to an invasive, humiliating campaign by her estranged husband. He spied on her, invaded her privacy, and dragged deeply personal matters into the public eye. All she wants is to protect her children and move forward with dignity. Leonora dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her performance flawless. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her. When it was our turn, Amanda stood. She began with the paternity test results, calmly laying out the timeline of Leonora's pregnancy and her affair with Mason. Mr. Alford has conducted himself with nothing but restraint and dignity, Amanda argued. He's been forced to uncover the truth through extraordinary means because Mrs. Alford's betrayal and deception left him no choice. She handed the judge the evidence Camden had gathered, photographs, hotel receipts, text messages, and financial documents. The weight of it was palpable. Furthermore, Amanda continued, Mrs. Alford has engaged in fraudulent activities with her lover, Mason Forster. These include embezzlement and misappropriation of client funds at her place of employment. The plaintiff can provide clear evidence of these crimes, should the court require it. Leonora's attorney objected, of course, but Amanda's composure was unshakable. The evidence speaks for itself, she said, handing over a thick stack of documents. The first ripple of the scandal hit the media the next morning. I was getting the kids ready for school when my phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. A local news outlet had picked up the story, reporting on the suburban family torn apart by infidelity and financial crime. The headline was brutal: pregnancy scandal and corporate fraud. The Alford divorce goes public. By lunchtime, the story had spread like wildfire. My face, Leonora's face, and even stock photos of a crying baby dominated headlines across multiple outlets. Leonora's attempts to control the narrative crumbled as the media dug deeper into her life. A whistleblower from her firm came forward, corroborating the claims of financial misconduct. Reporters uncovered more damning details, including extravagant purchases Leonora and Mason had made with their ill-gotten gains. Suddenly, Leonora's polished image of a loving mother and successful professional was shattered. The next day in court, Leonora's attorney pivoted to damage control, trying to downplay the fraud allegations as misunderstandings and shifting focus back to the custody dispute. Regardless of the plaintiff's claims, he argued, my client remains the children's primary caregiver. Her relationship with her children has always been strong, and it is in their best interest to remain in her care. Amanda was ready. Your Honor, she said. The defendant's actions demonstrate a pattern of deceit and recklessness. Her affair, financial crimes, and attempts to manipulate her husband into raising another man's child show a clear disregard for the well-being of her family. How can someone who values lies over truth be trusted to care for two innocent children? She presented Leonora's financial transactions, showing how she had funneled money into a private account while neglecting household expenses. She even played a voicemail Camden had obtained, in which Leonora and Mason discussed their schemes in chilling detail. The courtroom was silent when it ended. By the time the hearing concluded for the day, the cracks in Leonora's defense were glaring. Even her attorney seemed rattled, flipping through his notes with increasing frustration. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed both of us. I kept my head down, muttering a polite no comment as Amanda guided me to the car. Leonora, however, took a different approach, stopping to deliver a tearful statement to the cameras. This has been the hardest time of my life, she said, her voice trembling. I've made mistakes, but all I want is to move forward and focus on my children. I hope the media will respect our privacy as we work through this painful process. Her performance was convincing, but the damage was already done. The media had smelled blood, and they weren't about to let go. That evening, I sat with Amanda, reviewing the day's proceedings. She's cornered, Amanda said, sipping her coffee. If we keep up the pressure, she'll fold. But we need to be careful. The judge won't look kindly on anything that seems like a smear campaign. The evidence is overwhelming. We've got this. I nodded, trying to believe her. The court battle was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like the tide was turning. All I could do now was wait for the judge's ruling and hope that justice, at long last, would be served. Leonora and Mason's house of cards began to tumble faster than anyone could have predicted. It started with a breaking news alert. The Securities and Exchange Commission had launched a formal investigation into Mason's company, citing allegations of embezzlement, falsified invoices, and misuse of client funds. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Amanda had quietly sent Camden's findings to the SEC after verifying that Mason and Leonora's schemes had crossed state lines, making it a federal matter. It wasn't just a divorce battle anymore. It was a full-blown legal and financial nightmare for them both. A week later, the FBI joined the investigation. Mason's office was raided in a high-profile operation, agents hauling out boxes of files and seizing computers. Images of him, standing outside the building with his face pale and drawn, were plastered across every news outlet. By the evening, Leonora wasn't spared from the fallout. As Mason's lover and co-conspirator, her name appeared in almost every report. The media had a field day dissecting her role in the scandal, dragging up every detail of her personal and professional life. Her coworkers at the firm distanced themselves immediately. I learned through Amanda that her employer had quietly terminated her, releasing a bland statement about internal reviews and upholding ethical standards. Leonora, once the social butterfly of her industry, found herself blacklisted overnight. Meanwhile, the public's judgment was swift and merciless. Comments on news articles branded Leonora a gold digger and homewrecker, with her pregnancy becoming the focal point for outrage. Social media exploded with memes mocking her duplicity, some so vicious I couldn't bring myself to look. What surprised me most was how quickly people turned on Mason. He had been a successful, charismatic businessman, but the revelation of his crimes and betrayal of his own clients destroyed his reputation. He went from being a rising star in the corporate world to a cautionary tale of greed and hubris. I found out about the depth of their financial ruin through Camden, who kept tabs on the fallout. Mason's accounts are frozen, Camden told me over the phone. The SEC got wind of the shell companies he and Leonora were using. Without access to those funds, they're hemorrhaging money. It's only a matter of time before the banks come for what's left. The court hearings continued. Her lawyer tried to argue for leniency in custody arrangements, citing her role as the children's primary caregiver, but Amanda countered swiftly. Mrs. Alford's actions demonstrate a clear pattern of instability and dishonesty, Amanda said. Her involvement in a federal fraud case only underscores her inability to provide a safe and stable environment for her children. Leonora sat silently, her shoulders slumping further with each word. The final blow came during a televised press conference. The SEC announced formal charges against Mason for fraud and conspiracy. Leonora was named as a cooperating witness, a term that might have been her lifeline, if not for the fact that cooperating meant admitting her role in the scheme. Her public statement was a mess of half apologies and deflections. She claimed she had been manipulated and that Mason had coerced her into participating. But the evidence told a different story. By the time she walked off that stage, her professional reputation was beyond repair. In the weeks that followed, Leonora's world fell apart completely. The house we once shared was listed for sale. Her old friends stopped calling. Her professional contacts disappeared. Mason wasn't faring any better. He had lost everything, the company, his wealth, and whatever respect he had left in the corporate world. Rumors swirled about his impending arrest, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the justice system caught up with him. The call came late one evening, long after the kids had gone to bed. "This is Jameson," I said cautiously. "Mr. Alford," a woman's voice replied. "My name is Camille Forster. Mason is my brother." Her name alone was enough to make my stomach tighten. "Why are you calling me?" I asked. "I need to talk to you," she said, her tone softening. "Not about the affair. This is bigger than that. Can we meet in person? I have something you need to see." The next day, we met at a small cafe on the edge of town. Camille looked nothing like her brother. Where Mason was polished and confident, Camille was understated with a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put me at ease. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding a large envelope across the table. I opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of documents, emails, financial records, and memos. It didn't take long to realize the magnitude of what I was holding. Leonora and Mason hadn't just been stealing from their own company, they'd also been engaging in corporate espionage. They had been selling confidential information about rival firms to third parties, raking in profits under the table while undermining their competitors. "How did you get this?" I asked. Camille leaned forward, her expression grim. "I've known about Mason's schemes for a while, but I didn't realize how far he'd gone until now. After your case hit the news, I started digging through old files at his office. He used me to cover his tracks, but I didn't understand what I was helping him do back then." Her voice faltered. "He's my brother, but I can't let this slide. He's hurt too many people, including you." I brought the evidence straight to Amanda. "This is it," she said finally, closing the last file. "This isn't just for fraud. It's serious, federal crime, espionage, wire fraud, conspiracy. It's enough to put both Mason and Leonora away for a long time. We turn it over to the authorities. The SEC and the FBI are already circling them. This will push everything over the edge." The next morning, Amanda and I met with federal investigators. Camille had agreed to join us, bringing her credibility and first-hand knowledge to the table. The agents were skeptical at first, but as Amanda laid out the evidence, their expressions shifted from doubt to grim determination. "We've been tracking Forster for months," one agent admitted. "But this changes everything. If what you're saying holds up, this could unravel one of the largest corporate espionage rings we've seen in years." Within days, the fallout began. Federal agents executed search warrants at Mason's company and Leonora's former office, seizing more documents and arresting several of their associates. News of the investigation dominated the headlines, and the public outrage grew louder with each revelation. One evening, Camille called me again. "I just wanted to say thank you. For listening, for trusting me. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, but seeing them finally held accountable, it feels worth it." "I should be thanking you," I replied. "You didn't have to come forward, but you did. That takes guts." She laughed softly. Let's just say we both have a lot to rebuild. Good luck, Jameson. You deserve better than what they did to you. The courtroom was packed on the day of the sentencing. The air buzzed with quiet murmurs as reporters and spectators filled every available seat, eager to witness the final chapter of the scandal that had captivated the city for months. The judge didn't take long to deliver the verdict. Mason Forster, he began, his voice firm. You have been found guilty of fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and corporate espionage. Your actions have caused immense harm to individuals, businesses, and the public trust. I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison. Mason closed his eyes, his shoulders slumping under the weight of the verdict. The judge turned to Leonora. Leonora Alford, you have been found guilty of fraud and conspiracy. While your role was less prominent than your co-defendants, it was no less deliberate. I sentence you to 5 years in federal prison. Leonora gasped, her hands flying to her face. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom as the judge dismissed the session. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The media continued to dissect the case, but for the first time, I felt like I was watching from the outside, instead of being caught in the storm. At home, I focused on the kids. I threw myself into being the best father I could be, knowing that they deserved nothing less. After the court case, Amanda suggested I take my newfound reputation and turn it into something constructive. You've lived through what most people only read about, she said. You understand the signs of betrayal on a personal and corporate level. Why not help others see them too? Within months, I'd left my old job and started my own consulting firm, specializing in corporate fraud and personal security. My focus was simple, to help others protect what mattered most. My firm flourished beyond my expectations. Word spread quickly about the fighter for justice who turned his life around after betrayal. Corporations brought me in to audit their systems and train their teams. Individuals sought my guidance to protect their families, finances, and businesses. I didn't just survive Leonora's betrayal. I thrived in spite of it. And if there was one thing I knew with absolute certainty, it was this. The strongest walls are built from the stones life throws at you. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to the channel.